RFK Jr., he did something a little cringe. Maybe not even a little. This is just wild shit. And it's really concerning to me. He decided that it would be a good idea to create a registry for people who have autism, in particular kids who have autism. Let's go ahead and bring this in here. Breaking news from Washington and beyond. I don't know what the hell he was thinking with this one. And he must have had a couple of late night drinks when he came up with this idea. RFK Jr. set to launch disease registry tracking autistic people. And he's using private medical records to make it happen. Okie dokie. The National Institute of Health is helping to collect private medical records from government and commercial databases to give the Secretary of Health and Human Services, NIH Director Dr. J. Bhattacharya. The records include prescription records from pharmacies, lab testing, and genomics records from the Department of Veteran Affairs and Indian Health Service, private insurance claims, and data from smart watches and fitness trackers. Hells no. I'll get into the HIPAA thing in a second, but hells no. Like, they're really trying to track, like, what the hell? The NIH is also working on an agreement to secure Medicare and Medicaid data. They also go on to say that select outside researchers will be able to access and study, but not download the collected data from the registry. Kennedy, a longtime critic of, you guys know, the jab, made the study of autism one of his HHS primary goals under his tenure. The Department's Center for Disease and Control Prevention has launched a study to examine links between autism and the jab, even though medical experts have long debunked any such connection. So, first of all, what if people don't want you to have that information? What if they don't want the HHS to have the information that, like, let's say their kid may have autism or whatever? Like, what happened to privacy? What happened to protecting that type of information? What the fuck is going on here? I don't get it. I don't get this at all. Goes on to say here that HHS and its departments, including the NIH and the CDC, have laid off thousands of employees in the past few months, possibly giving Kennedy and Bhattacharya also, they call them that, more compliant employees to push their agenda. It goes here to say Kennedy has drawn criticism from mainstream medical researchers by calling autism preventable and made the outlandish claim that he can find the cure for the condition by September. So I gotta say this, folks. This This feels like some like Minority Report type thing. Like, it just feels invasive, and you would think your health has the right to be protected, right? Like, there is a such thing as HIPAA. We'll get into that in just a second here, because people are asking, like, isn't this illegal? Isn't this a HIPAA violation? Let's see what HIPAA shows, right? So we'll get into the privacy rule here of what, I want to make sure I'm going to the right one. What can be protected? Let me see here. Okay. What information is protected? This is what I want you to see under HIPAA. The privacy rule protects all individually identifiable health information held or transmitted by a covered entity, its business associate, in any form or media, whether it's electronic, paper, or oral. The privacy rule calls this information protected health information. Individually identifiable health record is information, including demographic data that relates to the individual's past, present, or future physical, mental health, or condition. This part right here, past, present, future, physical, or mental health or condition. So I don't understand how he can create this registry if we're looking at what HIPAA says, the information that is protected under HIPAA. I don't get this at all. The provision of healthcare to the individual or the past, present, or future payments for the provision of healthcare to the individual. That's important as well, payment part, because they also want to access Medicare and Medicaid and that type of thing. And I'm just here to tell you guys, I think this is a horrible idea. I don't think you should be putting people on a registry because of an illness that they have. You know, there are some people that are very public about having autism, and then there are some people who their family is protecting them and doesn't want that very public. I mean, the reality is, as an individual, you have a right to keep that information to yourself. And what you share with your doctor is supposed to be between you and your doctor. So that leads me to think, what else would be next? I mean, if they want to create a registry for this, what are they going to do next? Let's create a registry for all the people who attended pro-Palestinian protests. You know, sometimes I wonder if we're actually living in the Matrix. And I started to ask myself this question. What if the world as we know it right now and what we think is real, what if this isn't real and we're just living in the Matrix? I have to ask these questions sometimes because crazy things have been happening over the past couple of years. This is bad. I don't agree with this at all. At all. I don't think people should be put on registries. Now, if they volunteer that information and say, yes, I would like to sign up for that, that's different. But not a fan of that at all. At all. There are other ways that you can help people. And I want to show you this part. Now, that's the bad. Here's what I consider to be pretty good. I don't think it heals the wound. You know, I don't think it's a fix all, but I do think this is something that does need to be done. RFK Jr. and his committee here have decided to ban food dyes. Let's go ahead and get into that part here. Here's him speaking on it.
And one of the problems, you know, when I met with, and I want to commend the food companies for working with us to achieve this agreement or this settlement. And when I went in a few months or about a month ago to meet with the food companies, I was talking with my staff about these petroleum-based dyes, and I said, if they want to add petroleum, if they want to eat petroleum, they ought to add it themselves at home. But they shouldn't be feeding it to the rest of us. And
this part I do agree with, and let me tell you why. If you guys travel to other countries, go to their grocery store. If you ever travel to another country, go to the grocery store, buy something, right? Buy something. I want you to look on the back of the package and read the ingredients. They don't have all the additives that we have in our food. They don't have red dye, yellow dye. You know, they don't have all this extra stuff. And then people wonder why. Why do people in France live so much longer, but they eat such fattening food and they smoke and they drink? Number one, the motherfuckers get a real vacation. Number two, they don't have the type of stress that we have. Everybody got health care. There's that. The kids actually get real food at school. They're not getting like, you know, that square pizza that isn't really pizza and tastes like cardboard. They actually get real food. They don't have to worry about some of the things that we have to worry about in this country. So there's that. But there's a difference between the food that we have here in the United States and the food that exists in some of the other countries. This is also why sometimes if you travel abroad and you eat the food there, you might feel a little sick. It's different. Tara Reid talked about this when she was living in Russia. She said, even in Russia, she said they don't have GMOs in their food. She said it tastes very different. And you can tell. I'm sure if you go to China and you eat Chinese food, it's not the Chinese food that we make here in the United States. It's been Americanized. There's MSG. There's all this other stuff that's added to it. There's sugar. And I'm going to get to the sugar part in just a second. Anyway, our food, for the most part, a lot of it is unhealthy. This is also why I advise people, if you can, to try to limit or stay away from processed food. Let's continue on.
Without our knowledge or consent. And unfortunately, we're going to get rid of the dyes, and one by one, we're going to get rid of every ingredient and additive in school in food that we can legally address. One of the problems is that the industry, which all of these industries, cast a dark shadow historically over this agency. And there's so many conflicts that we are now systematically eliminating. That has allowed them to suppress the science. There's shockingly few studies, even on food dyes, and on all these other ingredients as well. And Jay Bhattacharya, who is here and who is running, the director of NIH, is now narrowly targeting these kind of food additives for scientific study, so that one by one we can start eliminating them where they can. Where we can't, there's things that we'll never be able to eliminate, like sugar. And sugar is poison. And Americans need to know that. It is poisoning us. It's giving us a diabetes crisis. When I was a kid, I always say this, a typical pediatrician would see one case of diabetes in his lifetime. Today, it's 1 out of every 3 kids who walks through his office door.
Pause. I want to comment about the sugar. This is the part that some people may not like to hear, but I got to keep it real. Sugar is bad. Sugar's bad. And it's one of those things you either have to limit or you have to just rule out, right? And there's different types of sugar. There's a difference between eating a strawberry, which is nice and sweet and juicy. I love strawberries. And having a candy bar. They're both sweet, but one's a naturally sweet and the other one is not. You see what I mean? I'm going to come back to this. I want to show you something because Chili from TLC, she talked about this before too. This is someone who has always been very fit. Always very fit. I don't think I've ever seen a picture or image of Chili over all these years. And she's in her 50s now. And she's in her 50s in this video. Always taking great care of herself. I want you to hear what she says about sugar.
Make sure your core is as strong as it can possibly be, because you age better the back. Because when you get older, a lot of people are like, oh, my hips, my this, my that. And they think it's their age, but it's not. It's because you've gone all these years without taking care of yourself. So your body is eventually going to tell you these things. So I always say get a good acupuncturist, because acupuncture releases inflammation. Inflammation is the devil, y'all, along with sugar. You know, those two are their best friends. You know what I mean? And they're after us.
Absolutely.
But seriously, eat right, eat clean. You know, stay away from the devil's juice. I don't drink. I don't do any of those things. Make sure.
So the sugar and I'll get to the alcohol part in just a second. Sugar can cause a lot of problems, not just diabetes. You're talking about high blood pressure. We're talking about, pull this up here. When we talk about insulin, like an insulin resistance, if you ever get to that point where you feel kind of sluggish after you just had something really sweet, it can cause insulin spikes. So, and I don't see that like as a good thing, but it's something that you want to, if you have it, you want to have that in moderation. You want to limit it, meaning, no, it's not okay to, when I grew up, you guys let me know, when I grew up, we grew up eating, we had a meat, a starch, and a vegetable on the plate. And as I got older, I had to realize you don't always need the starch. You don't have to have potato. You don't have to have rice. It's okay to just have like the meat and the vegetables or like fruit or something like that. But when I was a kid, when I was growing up, like after dinner, you would have like a little dessert. Maybe it was a cookie, or maybe it was back then Twinkies were my jam. I told you the story about the guy trying to take my Twinkie, but that type of thing. But that's really not good. Like, guys, no, you really should not have dessert every day. Like it's really not. The sugar, and it's hidden in some things or things you may not think about, right? Like you're like, I didn't have dessert, but I had a Diet Coke. That's still sugar. Soda, I've ruled out soda years ago. If I tried to have a soda right now, I'd probably get nauseous. No soda for me. Lots of water, drink lots of water, but the sugar is the big one. This is one of the things that I think sometimes people don't realize when they go out to eat, because the best way to take care of your health, to take care of your eating, is to cook at home, because you know what you're putting in the food. When you go out to eat at restaurants, a lot of times you don't know how much sugar. Oh, I got a grilled chicken breast and it just had this sauce on it. How much sugar was put in that sauce? You don't know. So this is why I tell people to try to limit takeout, try to limit going out to eat. This is not something you should be doing every day. How much sugar, is in a McDonald's milkshake? You don't know. So that one, that's a bad one. What I recommend, if you have a sugar or sweet craving, grab fruit. That's usually what I do. Grab strawberries or like blueberries, raspberries, like that type of thing. And orange. If you guys, I can't eat oranges, but if you like oranges, that whatever, start with that first. Usually I think you'll find that sweet craving will go away. But your first reach should not be candy bar, cupcake, and I'm not saying you can never have these things, but it's not something that you should have often. Juice is a problem. I don't buy juice. I don't drink juice. Juice also has sugar. That's another one. If you want orange juice, fresh squeeze your own orange juice from the actual orange, because the stuff that you're buying in the grocery store is loaded with stuff. Jimmy said pasta. This is another one. When I started my weightlifting journey, I don't have regular pasta anymore. That's another one. Pasta, rice, these potatoes, they're just loaded with. So they have alternatives now. Like they have pasta made out of chickpeas. They have pasta made out of lentils. They do have alternatives now that they didn't have when I was growing up. So there's other things that you can have. And I was a pasta junkie. I'm talking, I had pasta like every other day. But now I have alternative pasta, or you can do squash pasta. Gregory said, make a fruit smoothie. It's naturally sweet. There you go. But he's right about the sugar, you guys.
In our most recent study from NIH, 38% of American teens, half our adult population. This is existential. We are spending as much on mitochondrial disorders like diabetes as we spend on our military budget. We can't continue to exist like this. And the problem is industry is making money on keeping us sick. As Jay pointed out, ADHD is associated with all these behavioral disorders. But those disorders are treated not by changing our diet, providing medications to treat our kids, and they get medicated, and that's the only solution. And I would point out that there is part of the etiology of these diseases is a kind of media malpractice. a mass psychosis that has our media not talking about this. And one of the possible reasons for that is the amount of money that's coming from the pharmaceutical companies into our media and from these food companies.
Yeah, the pharmaceutical companies and, big pharma and the insurance companies, they're all in on this together, because how did they make money if no one's sick? How do they make money if no one's sick? Why would you need them? A lot of the preventative appointments are free. So how would they make money if no one's sick? My mom told me when she was growing up back in the day, she said that they used to go to my great grandfather's farm in North Carolina, and they used to pick tomatoes and peppers like from my great grandpa's farm. And my mom always said, till this day, no tomato that you buy in the grocery store is going to taste like the tomato pulled right off the vine on a farm. None. I can tell you, like, when I moved to Massachusetts, one of the newer things that I did when I moved here was just going apple picking. That's kind of a big thing up here. Until this day, once I went apple picking once, and just like that, I was hooked. And I said, I will never buy another apple in the grocery store again. It does not taste the same. And for anyone that's watching that grows their own food, they can tell you too, they know it don't taste the same. One of the easier things to grow, I think, are cucumbers. So if you have a cucumber that you grew like in your backyard or whatever, it does not taste like the cucumber at the grocery store. If you go to some of those farmers markets, which I think can be overpriced sometimes, but if you have time to go to one of those, get you something small, like maybe a fruit or something, right? And you'll be able to taste the difference. So I always been encouraging people, grow your own food if you can. I brought on people onto the show to explain how to grow your own food. There was a guy who came on to tell people how to grow their own food, even if they lived in an apartment, which he does. And he lives in New York and he does it. It's just so many different things, you guys. And I really, once I started my weightlifting journey, I had to change the way that I ate. And now when I go to, it's different. So it's been like, what, a year now? When I go to the grocery store, it's so different than how it was 2 years ago, because I used to go up and down the aisles and now I don't. Now I shop around the aisles because that's where the fresh things are, the vegetables, right? The meats and that type of stuff. But once you start walking up and down those aisles, unless you're going to get condiments, I mean, a lot of the stuff is processed and so much sugar and so many things. The TV dinners too, you have to be very cautious of. There's a lot of sodium. Healthy choice, lean cuisine. Yeah, they're less calories than Stouffer's, but they're loaded with sodium. That's what they use to preserve the food. So I always caution that towards people, especially if you have high blood pressure. Like, you got to watch the sodium, right? There's a certain amount you're supposed to have within a day. And I look back on this and I think, especially Black people, listen to me for a second, the way that some of us grew up and the foods that we were raised on, like soul food and stuff like that, a lot of times wasn't healthy. And I tell this to my mom sometimes too, when she cooks, I'm like, I don't need all that. Like, Mom, that's so not healthy. It doesn't mean you can't have those things, but you're not supposed to eat like that every day. You're not supposed to have mac and cheese and collard greens with, like, and I love collard greens, but you're not supposed to have that every day. So these are some of the things that you learn along the way, but the dyes, I think, is a good start. I think what should go along with this is we have to make healthy food more affordable for people who can't, because a Hot Pocket is cheap as hell. And if you ain't really got money like that, what do people usually do? They go towards the items that are cheap. Let's continue on a little bit more.
The advertising. The advertising has at least plays a factor. So that revenue, that extraordinary revenue stream, in disabling their their capacity or their inclination for skepticism and for critical thinking. So Americans don't know what they're eating, and they don't know the implications of those things. And for those products, Mark Hyman says in his book, the 10-day sugar detox diet, which I'll give a plug to, is a very good book. He talks about how dangerous sugar is and how it's as addictive as crack. And our children are addicted to it from when they're little kids. Our agency recommends, I think, a huge amount of sugar for kids from when they're born. And it's hurting them, and it's addicting them, and it's changing their taste buds so that they crave it. And it's disabling our population. So for those ingredients that we can't ban legally, we're going to start informing Americans about what they're eating. And we're going to try to work with Congress and the White House, make sure that we have adequate labeling so mothers who go into the grocery stores know what is good for their children and what is not. I want to say one other thing about the moms. When I went and spoke for the first time, and I met with the heads of all the food industry companies, one of the things that they said to us is that the worst thing for us is if we have a patchwork of legislation in all these different states, because then we're not capable of marketing nationally distributed products, because we're going to have different regulations in every state. And they didn't want that. And that's one of the reasons they came to the table with us. I want to thank Speaker Schultz. I want to thank Governor Morrissey. And I visited many other governors in Virginia and West Virginia, in Arizona and Utah and other states that are banned, that are having these local bans. Those bans have given us leverage to make demands in the food company. And the only reason that those states have banned these products is because of these ladies and millions of more across the country, the warrior moms who have powered the MAHA movement.
Yeah, you guys get the gist of it there, but I gotta say again, and I can do a whole, that's another workshop I can do, because I got the mutual aid workshop coming up. That's another workshop I can do to teach you guys about what to eat for fitness, because I've been doing this for a year now. It's just a number of things I'm telling you guys, where years ago I thought I was eating healthy. I didn't realize that the salads at Panera Bread with chicken on it are loaded with sodium. They may not have a lot of calories, but they use a lot of salt to preserve the chicken. Same thing if you go to Sweet Green. It's loaded with sodium, and a lot of those bowls, warm bowls of Sweet Greens, have a lot of calories. You would be surprised. So it's just, it may be healthier than going to Burger King or something like that. But sometimes you think you're eating something healthy and you realize that you're not. So like I said, my mom always said, you come out better just making your own damn food. You really do. So the good with that is that I do agree with the red dyes. I think that's a good way to go. The bad part is I do not agree with the registry for autism. I think that should be voluntary if people want to do that. I don't think that information should be extracted without their consent. That's how I feel about that. But yeah, Yuli said, cook your own food. Yeah, you really come out better just making your own food, guys. You really do. And then you get used to it. I told you, I used to eat pasta every other day. That was my jam. And then you realize certain things, right? You're oh, why do I feel bloated? Why do I feel swollen? It's a lot of these foods lead to inflammation. And that's something you want to prevent. Now, I'm not saying you got to be like Tom Brady and do the TB12 method, but where I think he eats foods that are only in season or something like that. But you know what will work for you. But I do think that they're not. Joy, some veggie burgers at the supermarket are not that healthy. They're not. And if you look at the back, you read the ingredients and you look at, again, a lot of the sodium, and those Impossible burgers have a lot of sodium. You're better off just making your own thing. Hey guys, this was a Sabby clip. If you like what you saw, hit that like button and subscribe.